Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. Doing an Instagram and Facebook Live at the same time, so getting everything set up. Apologize that I'm a little bit later than I planned, about half an hour. Do a group coaching call on Fridays, teaching some high-level coaches how to get to the next level and be in the top 1% of coaches with some tools and techniques. And yeah, today's call got a little in depth and went a little further, so that's why I couldn't quite give an exact time, but I figured somewhere shortly after 1:30 I'd be in. Anyway, yeah, I had a lot of questions. A lot of you have watched the interview I posted the other day with Melissa, a client of ours, and her amazing story of overcoming such a trauma at such a young age, and that accumulated not just the emotional and emotional trauma, the pain and effects from all of that, but also created an anaphylactic allergy that actually had taken her life at one point for more than 5 minutes. So we've had a lot of questions about that, like how in the world was this allergy attached to traumatic event? Well, it doesn't make sense to us on the conscious level, right? As adults, we are looking at it more logical, more consciously. Well, the unconscious mind, what people, a lot of people don't understand, pretty much everybody now understands that we do have a subconscious mind, unconscious mind, non-conscious. There's about 10 different names for it that I know of. I usually refer to it as unconscious. But it all means the same thing. The unconscious mind is running everything. It's running our behaviors. It's running our belief system. It's our patterns. It runs our heartbeat, our breathing while we're sleeping. It's running everything. What we don't realize as well is it's constantly storing information and creating new beliefs with us. Sometimes we come up with these beliefs consciously, but they get stored unconsciously. Well, the case like Melissa, that you guys saw in the interview that has raised so many eyebrows and questions is the garlic allergy. It was present. It was picked up on during that trauma, and that's what gets associated unconsciously to the pain she was suffering. And the unconscious mind creates that allergy as a protection, as a way to keep her away from that pain, because it's like, okay, if garlic is what's causing the pain, if I'm allergic to it, I'm never going to be around it, and I'll be safe. Well, again, that doesn't make sense to us quite consciously. Well, how could it relate to garlic to that? How could it make that connection? Well, if you understand, the unconscious mind is a toddler. It's literally about a 3 or 4-year-old, and that's how it takes in the information. That's how it processes the information, and how it creates our behaviors, how it stores that information, runs it through the system, our processing system, and we come out with a belief on the other side. It's all done completely at that level. So that's what makes it makes all these things like allergies and pains in the body, illnesses in the body on so many different levels come from this way of processing them. It's easy to come up with these beliefs. It's easy to acquire this baggage because of that. But the beauty of it is it's also easy to release. In an instant, a phobia can be installed. Right? There's 2 different ways a phobia is installed, and that's stacked over and over, just little cases that aren't that traumatic in themselves, but over time they cause just enough pain, just enough tension around us that enough times it creates a phobia. The other way to create a phobia is in an instant. Know of 2 different cases. I use this example quite a bit. There was some girl was camping with her family. They went fishing and stuff, and her brother started tormenting her. She had a little bit older brother. Those of you who have siblings can totally relate. And her brother, welcome Pamela, Melissa, Colin, Peter, how you doing? My Bulgarian brother. I haven't talked to you in forever. Miss you very much. Yeah, her brother, like siblings tend to do, was tormenting her. So the fish they had caught while they were on this camping trip, he's chasing her around with the fish and slipping it in her sleeping bag. And so she would wake up with this fish slapping her around. And then when they got home, every time there was fish around or anything like that, he would chase her around with fish. So she got a phobia from fish and also a phobia of swimming because fish are in the water. If I don't go swimming, I'm safe. Then there was another girl, both of them happened to be girls, that she went on a boating trip with family, and they were throwing, it was a little tourist attraction. They take you out, glass bottom boat, they throw food out, and the fish swim all around the boat, and they just keep throwing food in to attract the fish. Well, she's a little kid. I think she was about 6 years old, and she sees all the fish. She's all excited. She's looking over the edge. Boom! She falls over the edge, lands in the water, and all of a sudden she's swarmed by all these fish just pecking at her. She didn't get physically hurt, but there was some emotional drama. She freaked out. There's 100 fish around her pecking at her. Instant phobia installed. So, and then every time she thinks of going in the water, every time she sees a fish after that, she kind of relives that. But in that one instant, highly traumatic state, it created that phobia. So like I said, there's the two different ways. Either it can be a gradual stack, or it's that one instant. Hi, mom, and that's how it gets installed. So in that instant, even with the gradual stack, there's a point to where it's like, okay, finally the unconscious mind is like, okay, this has happened enough. I create this phobia to keep me away from it, or I create this allergy to keep me away from it as a way of safety. There's a paranoia, there's something, but in that instant, that phobia is installed. Well, just like it's installed in an instant, whether it's an allergy, a phobia, whatever it is, it can be uninstalled in that same instant. Literally, I've got a lot of people reaching out to me. It's like, how can you say PTSD or phobia can go away in minutes? That's because it can. Um, the person has to be ready. See, that's the caveat. It's nothing I do. It's nothing any other coach, therapist, or whoever. It's nothing they do. It's the person. It's the client that comes up. So in the case of Melissa, she was more than ready to let it go. She'd been trying for 2 decades. She just hadn't run across the proper set of tools. But she showed up in a big way, ready to let it go. I'm going to be interviewing another gentleman next week. His phobia was installed at 4 years old, and for more than 4 decades, he lived with that trauma. And in less than 12 minutes, he was able to let go of the PTSD and the phobia it caused. And actually, now when he looks back at the event at 4 years old, he actually laughs about it. We were talking on the phone yesterday. Jason, an amazing individual, and he'll be coming on next week. It's it's installed that quickly with Melissa. Her asthma was increased, the allergy was installed, the PTSD and the phobia, all in that instant, because of a horrific event that no one should ever have to go through. And the event is still there. It still happened. It's in the past. What we've done is release the baggage around it, and then reframe how she sees it whenever she looks at it, and all loosening that boundary. And so, in that moment, in that traumatic event, boom, it's installed. Because one of the main prime directives of the unconscious mind is protection, preservation, and some of the ways it does that is creating an allergy to garlic, creating an allergy to peanuts, creating an allergy to cats. I've heard of several people that created an allergy to an animal because they were bitten by it or scratched accidentally. I had a phobia of dogs for a while because, Mom, you gonna remember this? I was at a friend of my mom's house, and they had 2 different dogs. One was very friendly, the other one not so much. Was more pack-minded and only was friendly to the husband and wife that owned the dog and their kids. But I became friends with the dog. I stayed with her almost all summer. Became friends with the dog. One day I'm leaving. Dog didn't want me to leave, and it bit me on the leg, drugged me back, and kept holding on because it didn't want me to go. From that day forward, I didn't really like dogs anymore that much. I was scared of them. Even though I had all these other stories of dogs, our dogs, friends' dogs, that there was never that drama, never that response, never had that experience. But that one highly intense state there was able to cause it. And it took me a little while to get over it. It took quite a while. I was able to get over it a little bit just by realizing all the dogs I've been around that were fine, but I always approached them with caution. And there was always a barrier up. So yeah, I think, Mom, do you remember? Hey, PJ. I don't know if you remember what age I was. I think I was 11, and I was close to adulthood before I started being able to open up my mind to actually letting a dog. I was 21 before I had a dog as a pet again myself. It was actually a girl I was dating, and we lived together. And then still, I couldn't connect with the dog. Cats were no problem. We had snakes, we had ferrets, we had all kinds of animals. She was like living with Dr. Dolittle, but I could never attach. I could never really connect to a dog again. And it was until I had that awareness and realized it's all because of this one time. Only time I've ever been bit by a dog in my life. But it got more traumatic and my leg got infected. We're talking about having to do some surgery possibly at one point. Hi, Sarah. Welcome. Thank you for joining. Yeah, so every time I would look down and I'm treating that leg, I still have the scar to this day, but there's no emotional attachment to it anymore. But it took a long time. I didn't have the tools I have now back then. And like I say, that happens all the time. So just like Melissa with the garlic allergy, that was garlic has a very distinct smell, and it was in the air. It's on the person's breath who harmed her, and that's what the unconscious mind is able to pick up on. It's because you have this advantage like this has never happened before. This shouldn't be happening. It's painful. It's scary. It's all this stuff. What's going on and how do I stop it? And it looks for a generalized unconscious mind will generalize, distort, and delete. So it looks for the information that's familiar and it starts attaching it to that. And that's exactly what happens. So go get garlic, recognize that. It's very predominant. It's very present right now. Bam, allergy installed. And as those of you that watched the interview, hi, Michelle, welcome, thank you. Those of you that watched the interview, a couple of days after I worked with Melissa, she went and had garlic. I have her EpiPen. It's one of my most prized possessions. It's in my studio actually instead of my office where I am now. But it can really be that simple. And I get asked a lot. It's like, so are you saying that all allergies are linked to PTSD or all allergies linked to a phobia? So no, not necessarily, not at all. I know of a case that a kid was playing with the family cat. He played with his cat several times, but all of a sudden, something happens. Cat was playing on the windowsill, gets some dust on it, whatever it is. Cat gets in kid's lap, pet it, inhales the dust, inhales some cat dander, whatever it was, tickles the nose, causes her to sneeze. I don't know why all my examples today are little girls. It's just coincidence. It's what's coming to my mind. On my coaching class today, we're all women, so maybe that's it. I'm more in tune to the feminine right now. But yeah, an aunt was there visiting the family. Here's the little girl sneeze. She's like, "Oh, darling, you must be allergic to cats." From that day forward, even though the girl had played with that family cat all her life, all 4 years, now, bam, she has a cat allergy. And she wasn't able to release it until she was 30, and she was in a training, and she was run through just a normal allergy model. What Melissa and I did, what Jason and I did, the gentleman you guys will meet next week, is not an allergy model. It's a trauma release. It's an emotional release to get rid of the baggage there. You see, many different ways something like an allergy can be installed, but at the end of it, it always turns out to be some kind of unconscious belief, some kind of unconscious programming. So people call it limiting beliefs, whatever it is. And I guess it is a form of limiting belief because there's a limit saying I can't play with cats. Like I say again, a 4 or 5 year old being run by a 4 or 5 year old's mind. I mean, we as adults, our unconscious mind is still just a 4-year-old. So it's still living in that same belief pattern. So if you start looking at it that way, that's what makes it so easy for these beliefs, this programming to get installed, but that's also what makes it so easy to release. You just have to approach it that way. So we think about it whenever you talk to those of you that have had kids or have nieces, nephews, or friends with kids, get around them when they're 4 or 5 years old. You can't have the same communication that you do with adults and get this. You're not going to get the same outcome. It's because it's like speaking a totally different language. But the way to build rapport with that child is get on their level. Same thing with the unconscious mind. That's all we're doing when we're running people through these techniques. That's how what we look at it as adults is, oh my God, that's a miracle. That's unbelievable. It's really not once you understand the unconscious mind. It's actually so simple. I mean, when you understand the values of a 4-year-old, it gets very easy to get them to do what you want them to do, right? You just offer them a treat, basically. They'll clean the whole house, or they'll at least make an effort. They might not do it as thorough. You know, we have a 6-year-old, well, just turned 7 a couple of weeks ago, and he loves to vacuum, sweep, and mop. We have to go behind him after every time he does it, but I love the intention, and he absolutely loves it. If he finds out we're going behind him, he's going to run and do it, but he gets such a thrill out of wanting help. So we allow him to do it. Then after he goes to bed, then we reclean the whole house. But it's, I can actually entice him to do other things that he doesn't like doing, like putting away his laundry, by promising him he can mop the floor later. That's how much he loves it. It's awesome. I know it's not going to last long, but the unconscious mind is the same way. We just have to play its game, and it'll play right along with us, and it'll do whatever we want. So, you know, I think it was Albert Einstein, I believe, said, you have to learn the rules of the game and then play better than anybody else. Actually, I think that's someone's adjustment of what, in translation of what Albert Einstein said, but Einstein might have actually said, learn the rules of the game and then break them. I don't know. So many people take everybody's quotes and jumble them up, and I'm the king. I mix everybody's quotes together. But it's the same thing. You learn how the unconscious mind works, and then you beat it at its own game. And it's really easy to outsmart a 4-year-old. And that's all we're doing is, you know, whether we do a timeline technique or the rewind technique or fast phobia, any of that stuff, it's all just learning how the unconscious mind works and just playing that game with it, building some rapport, and then getting it to do what we need it to do. And that's release all the limiting beliefs. Because the reason it's holding on to that baggage, the reason why it's holding on to those limiting beliefs is because there was some emotion around that, some painful experience that it's wanting to learn from. So that's another directive, another characteristic of the unconscious mind is it's in trying to keep us safe, in trying to preserve us, is it holds the learnings. It's trying to hang on to those positive learnings and make life better, make life happy. You see, we all have the desire, the innate desire to want to be happy, want to be successful in life. And so what it's doing is it grabs on to those high emotional moments, and it's like, well, I'm suffering some pain here that I don't want to again. There's something I need to learn, something that if I knew, I would never experience this again. However, when it does that, because again, it's a 4-year-old, it can't distinguish. It doesn't have the discernment to decide what's positive and what's negative. So it just scoops it all up. So, you know, if you've ever given out candy at Halloween, if a child 4 years old runs up, you don't just hand the bucket over and say, oh, take what you want. They're going to take all of it. They're going to grab it all and run. And that's exactly what the unconscious mind is going to do with this. So what happens is this, you have this diamond of learning, but it's covered in this layer of coal that is the emotion that got packed around it. And so every time we think of the emotion, we have the same response over and over when it's these highly emotional states. Like when people go through a really nasty divorce, they're holding on to the anger of, you know, they feel betrayed, they feel whatever. And every time they think of it, every time they think of their ex, every time they see them, they're reliving that heartbreak, that betrayal, that pain, whatever it is for them. And until they're able to release that, they can't see the beauty of it. You know, it breaks my heart to see so many people that have a child together, and even though they're not together, they still have a kid, but instead of being able to co-parent and exist and have some gratitude for each other, because without the other one, the kid wouldn't exist, right? But there's this hatred, and they drag the kid through hell in these custody battles and all this other stuff because they're mad at each other. instead of being able to realize, wow, we created this being that would not be here without both of us. So at one point in time, we were meant to be together, at least for that. But we've got the baggage in the way. And once we release that, you can actually find that gratitude. You're not going to be best friends with them necessarily, or even friends. Don't have to be. That's not the goal. The goal is to live happy. And say until we're able to release that baggage so we can get to the positive learning inside, that diamond inside the coal, we're going to have a very challenging time finding happiness. And the way you know if it's baggage or not, I mean, emotions in the moment are very necessary. We are designed beautifully. We really are. Once you understand what causes human behavior and start understanding the psychology of it and the way the unconscious mind works, it's really a grand design. And just like the Pixar movie, I believe it's Inside Out, it shows that every emotion, whether it's happiness or they call it joy there, or if it's anger or sadness, there's a reason for it. And it's not by mistake. It's not a flaw in the system. There's a purpose for it. And part of the purpose is to help us process and heal through those traumatic events. The issue is how you know it's, again, emotion in the moment is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. In Western society, we tend to think there is, and we try to cover it up, especially as a male in our society. It's like, oh, suck it up, be a man. And it causes way more damage. It's much more macho, much more brave to be vulnerable, process it, be open about it. And so when you think about it, when you have emotion in the moment, it's totally awesome. It's cool. It's part of life. It's part of the experience. But when it's been 6 years and you look back at that and you still have pretty much the same reaction, that's when you know there's baggage. And it doesn't have to be 6 years. It can literally be days or weeks. It depends on the event, depends on what's going on. But it's way sooner than 6 weeks, because each time you experience it or think about it, it should actually get a little easier. But when it's the same reaction, and it's usually anger is involved. I'm not saying anger is bad, but when you think of something that happened 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, and you're still exploding about it with anger, there's some issue there. Road rage, you get cut off. It's not that big a deal. But, when you start visualizing wanting to chase the person down to their stop and then beat the crap out of them, that's baggage. And it can all be released. It's all stacked up from somewhere. You see, and that's the challenging part people have, is so much baggage is actually from multiple events. See, I actually find, just like Melissa, she had people actually turn her away that they wouldn't work with it because they thought things were too dangerous or whatever. I love those cases. I love the PTSD stuff. I love the phobia stuff. It's not that I like seeing people go through any of that or knowing that some of these horrid events exist. It's because it's that. I know it's how much easier it is, how much faster it can be released when the person's ready. So because they have the event, they're thinking about it consciously over and over again. It takes no work. That's actually the hardest part of what I do, is getting the person to understand it's an unconscious pattern, or it's an unconscious healing. It's an unconscious process. Get your conscious mind out of the way for a little bit and let's go play. Let's go tap into that 4-year-old. Quit up trying to understand it consciously and just go. Just believe that it can happen. Trust the process. That is the most challenging. Actually, releasing the trauma, that's like the easiest thing in the world. And people don't understand that really until they've had an experience with it. And again, if you haven't watched Melissa's interview, go through it. It went way longer than we had originally planned, but she was amazing at showing up and willing to share her story to help others. So, we just let it roll. But yeah, skip through it, see some highlights. I've actually been working on trying to edit it down to give just a couple of highlights, really key points. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. If you're going through something, post in the comments, or if you don't want to, reach out to me privately. We can look at doing a strategy call to see what it is you're experiencing and how you can be helped, whether it's through me or someone else. There are many different people. I don't have any special power. I know so many people that have all the same techniques or even more than I do. It's just I found my niche. I found the thing that I love. I'm not scared to go there with you. I'm not scared to help you get rid of it. And it's let's say I find it without sounding condescending or sounding like I'm disrespecting any of it. it's become a game to me because it's a puzzle of figuring out how to get the unconscious mind to do what we need it to do. And the basic steps are typically the same. There's only a few things that change per person. And once you know how to listen to that and what you're looking for, it's really fantastic how ridiculously fast it can happen and how amazingly simple it actually is. I say it's not always 100% easy. Depends on the situation, but typically it usually is. With Melissa, we open up about that on how there were actually a few more buttons I pushed with her than I would have most other people. But knew she was ready. I knew we were on a very strict time restraint, because that's the biggest thing is we've got to I want to go through and I want to eliminate all of it. When I work with someone, I want to know that when they walk away from me, they're done. A lot of coaches try to get people into, I don't even like calling myself a coach, because most people I know that are coaches, they want to lock people in for like a 12-month, 24-month, 3-year thing, where it's like, oh, I've had the same coaching client for 10 years. It's like, well, you failed that person as a client or as a coach. You have failed them. My job is for you to come and meet me and never need me again. When I was doing business coaching, it was the same thing. I was like, 3 to 6 months, I want you to grow on to someone else. I don't want you feeling like you always have to come back to me. And when I got into this and I really started diving deep into this, it's like, I want to figure out how to get you to never need me again, unless some traumatic event ever happens again in your life. But even then, I want you to have the tools to where you're able to make sure it's not that traumatic. You'll have some kind of experience, but you don't have to relive it all the time. It's like, if I can meet you for one session and you never have to see me again, awesome. We're done. That's great. That's what I want. I mean, you can reach out to me, give me updates. I love it. Jason is coming on next week. I worked with him a couple of years ago, and he still reaches out to me, gives me updates. I reach out to him just to see how he's doing, because it was such an amazing turnaround. And he actually is the one that, the experience I had with him is actually what planted the seed that led me to focusing on PTSD and phobias. And then again, when I met Melissa a while back, I said, yeah, this is exactly why I'm in this niche. And it's magical to be able to be a part of this with people. And again, if you have anything like that you're in question about or wondering if something's possible, give me a shout. Reach out, go through and look at what's possible. Like, say, if it's not something I feel like I can help with, I know someone that can. If I don't have an answer, I know someone that does. I have many, many mentors and a long list of colleagues that specialize in all kinds of stuff. Anyone that wants help, I always wanted to be able to provide them with an answer. If I can do it, awesome. If not, it's not about me. It's not about stroking my ego. It's about getting you the help, because I know what it's like not to have it. And that's the main thing that drives me in this. So again, guys, thank you so much, everyone that showed up and is watching this live or watching it later on. Anything I can do, any questions you have, feel free, reach out at any time. I'm always here. This is what I'm here for, not just on Facebook, not just social media existence, but in life in general. This is why I exist. So I may not be the best at it, but I don't do anything better than I do this stuff. And but it's because I've been with some fantastic clients that I've learned a whole lot from, and they've opened up and shared so much. So Melissa, I see you're here. Thank you again so much for trusting me when we work together and showing up like you did, and then showing up how you do in our group coaching, and also agreeing to be interviewed like that. You've done so much to help me spread awareness to people of what's possible. I'm internally grateful to you and for you. So everyone else, of course, got to give a shout out to Mom since she's here. I'm ever so grateful for you, because of you I exist. My kids exist. Because of you, I'm in a relationship that's amazing. And speaking of that relationship, Marina's here watching somewhere. Love you. See you in a little bit. Yeah, you guys have a fantastic weekend, and to those that applies for, happy Easter coming up, happy Good Friday. Yeah, looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you.